Battling climate change, nations around the world are taking more concrete steps to combat the issue. But will their efforts be enough to keep global temperatures at specific levels? We'll explain. Plus, some companies in Nigeria are finding a new use for plastic bottles, how it could be a game changer when it comes to protecting the environment. And invasive carp. Scientists say they wreak havoc on aquatic ecosystems. We'll take a look at how scientists are using the fish as a sort of double agent in the U.S. Great Lakes. Hello and welcome to EarthX News, where we focus on sustainability and the environment. I'm your host, Christina Thompson. Let's get into some of the biggest headlines facing our planet. Some nations are starting to get serious about climate change, but is it happening fast enough? Even though the intention is there, according to a United Nations report, the changes aren't happening fast enough to offset global climate change. Now, the allegations were made in the UN's annual assessment, known as the Emissions Gap Report, which tracked the gulf between nations' plans to fight climate change and what scientists say is actually required to keep the world temperatures at levels agreed upon in the 2015 Paris agreements. That gulf has shrunk over the years, but still remains large enough to fight off catastrophe. Now, according to the New York Times, even if all 149 countries keep the promises they made in the Paris Agreement, and that is a big if, Earth will still be on track to heat up roughly 2.5 to 2.9 degrees Celsius over pre-industrial levels by the end of the century. That means an increase in risks like deadly heat waves, wildfires, droughts, storms, and species extinctions. And the push to end global plastic pollution hitting a snag. The latest round of negotiations to craft a treaty closed in Nairobi, Kenya, after United Nations delegates failed to come up with an agreement on how to push forward a draft. The week-long meeting was one of several that had previously failed, in which the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee for Plastics was unable to fine-tune their plan to create the first international legally binding treaty on plastic pollution. It's a task the committee was mandated with. Now, the committee, they're blaming oil-producing countries, saying these nations intentionally stalled to weaken the agreement. Meanwhile, New York is hopping on the plastic eradication train. The state sued PepsiCo, accusing the beverage and snack company of polluting the environment and putting public health in danger through its single-use plastic bottles, caps, and wrappers. The lawsuit is one of the first by a U.S. state to target a major plastic producer. According to accusations by New York Attorney General Letitia James, PepsiCo is responsible for public nuisance by generating a significant amount of plastic waste found in and near the Buffalo River. In fact, she says PepsiCo is at fault for more than 17% of the trash they've been able to trace back to specific brands. The suit is also meant as a signal to other manufacturers to begin proactively reducing plastic pollution. Nigerians are coming up with a practical way to repurpose some of this plastic bottle waste. They're building homes with it. Some Nigerian companies are now using plastic bottles to build homes that can survive powerful earthquakes and even bullets. Here's how they do it. The bottles are filled with sand. It essentially turns them into bricks as they are stacked on top of each other to form a wall. The bottles are held together with mud to create an entirely recycled structure. It takes just under 8,000 plastic bottles to build a one-bedroom, one-bathroom home with a kitchen and living room. According to Nigeria's Development Association for Renewable Energies, plastic bottle houses cost 67% less than a home built from concrete and brick. Plus, thanks to the sand compactly packed in plastic bottles, the homes have 20 times the strength of bricks. Climate-sensitive diseases are also spreading like wildfire. The National Climate Assessment, a federal report put together by more than a dozen federal agencies and various academic researchers, shows that climate change is pushing ticks, mosquitoes, and other carriers of disease into new regions. Lyme disease, which has historically been prevalent in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, is becoming endemic in the Midwest to winters in that region as they become milder. And western blackleg ticks, which carry the disease, are even creeping into Alaska, where conditions had normally been too harsh for the creepy crawler. Mosquitoes are passing on West Nile virus, and bacteria called Vibrio is thriving in places it had never been previously. The National Climate Assessment comes out once every 4 years. Plus, a well-known climate scientist, James Hansen, issued a warning of his own about our planet. You might know him as a scientist who warned Congress 35 years ago that humans are causing an increase in greenhouse gas emissions and changing our climate. Well, now he says climate change has happened even faster than we thought and sending us dangerously close to crisis. Since the pre-industrial era, Earth has warmed around 1.2 degrees Celsius. But recently, temperatures have spiked beyond that. 2023 was a hot summer and registered global temperatures 1.5 to 1.6 degrees warmer than the average during the pre-industrial era. Part of Hansen's conclusions are based on, strangely enough, cleaner air. He suggests the removal of some air pollutants, like aerosols, might actually be making Earth hotter.
Humanity made a Faustian bargain by offsetting a substantial but uncertain fraction of greenhouse gas warming with aerosol cooling. Now, as we want to reduce all the chronic health effects of aerosols, our first Faustian payment is due. The payment is acceleration of global warming.
Hansen went on to explain that aerosols and other particulate impurities, despite being a health hazard, actually help to cool the climate, and reducing them in the air lets in more sunlight, which then heats up the planet. However, his theory has garnered questions from the environmental science community, who are calling his study into question. Noted professor of earth science at the University of Pennsylvania, Michael Mann, offered his critique of Hansen's and his colleagues' conclusions on his website, writing, "The standard is high when you're challenging scientific understanding, and I don't think they've met that standard by a long shot. Other studies have shown the impact of aerosol reduction would have had much less of an impact than Hansen is projecting. In the meantime, countries like the U.S. are proposing measures aimed at curbing air pollution in an effort to combat climate change." Artificial intelligence is booming across the world, but powering it is proving to be a difficult challenge to tackle. The sheer amount of energy needed to power artificial intelligence models, think ChatGPT, is beyond what can be supported without alternative energy sources. The electricity supply is already strained due to increasing demand, and AI alone could consume up to 3.5% of the world's electricity by 2030. That's according to some estimates. Sustainability goals add complexity towards satisfying those energy demands, but remain a priority for many U.S. companies. Amazon.com, for example, Microsoft, and Google, they were among the first to explore a plethora of non-traditional energy sources, including wind and solar, to power their data centers, but those might not be enough. Now, those same companies are looking at an even wider range of sources, including geothermal, nuclear, and flared gas, a byproduct of oil production. Researchers estimate training one AI model, like OpenAI's GPT-3, can use the equivalent to the amount of electricity 1,000 U.S. homes use in a year. Wildlife officials in the Great Lakes are trying to stop the spread of an invasive carp species. Over the last few years, wildlife services in the area have tried to encourage the public to find and kill these fish, but now they're trying a new tactic. They're catching, tagging, and then releasing them. Carp typically swim in schools, so environmental agency workers wait for them to travel back in the spring and fall. They take out whole schools of them while they migrate using the one that was tagged. Now, it's ridding ecosystems of these carp help to keep the waters and the native species healthy. And when you think of waters off the coast of Texas in the Gulf of Mexico, you might think oil. You probably don't think coral. Now, despite misperceptions, the waters off the coast of Texas, about 100 miles out, are filled with some of the healthiest coral reefs on the planet. The location is incredibly beneficial to the coral, helping it to grow and thrive. It's sheltered in a deep, cool habitat in the Valley of Undersea Mountains within the Flower Garden Banks National Marine Sanctuary. However, scientists say even this coral won't be protected for long. It's still fragile, and its location can only protect it from climate change and warming waters for so long. In fact, the sanctuary did have some moderate bleaching this year, but nothing like the devastation that hit other reefs. For example, Florida's coral reef, the world's third largest, saw unprecedented and maybe even deadly levels of bleaching over the summer. Have you ever wondered what happens to all of that leftover food that doesn't sell by the end of the day at your local grocery store or lunch spot? Well, up until recently, it often would get thrown out and wind up in a landfill, contributing to the carbon footprint. But now, that's changing.
Here's some food for thought. The world wastes about 2.5 billion tons of food every year, with the United States throwing away more than any other country in the world, which means leftovers on the shelves are a nightmare for the environment. Or at least they used to be. 2 years ago, New York became one of 10 states to put policies in place aimed at reducing food waste. All 50 states now have legislation shielding organizations from criminal and civil liability linked to donated food. And as of late October, New York's program has redistributed 5 million pounds of food. Food that can now end up on tables this holiday season, which helps save the environment and your wallet.
So this applesauce here is actually missing one of the cups. So this can't be sold to a customer, but this can still feed a family.
Food like this is sold at a discount and comes from retail recovery programs at grocery stores like the one Sean Rafferty manages. When Rafferty started in the grocery business 40 years ago, anything that wasn't sold was tossed out.
Years ago, everything went in the garbage, everything went to the landfills, the compactors, wherever it was. Now, over the years, so many programs have developed where we're able to donate all this food.
As a result, at Feeding Westchester's Food Bank, the retail recovery programs now make up a quarter of the food they give out.
It's definitely an education process. That's where I come in. I go into the retail stores. I train them on safe food donation practices and let them know there are a lot of benefits to the retail recovery program for them and for their community.
For EarthX News, I'm Mike Carter.
Just ahead, ESG investing. It's been the hottest financial phrase of 2023. There are definitely winners to the ESG craze and definitely losers. We'll discuss coming up. Welcome back to EarthX News, environmental, social, and governance investing. That is right. We are talking all things ESG. ESG investing took over financial headlines this year, and while many of these companies thrived and made millions, plenty of others flopped. There's no doubt that investing in ESG is the future. So how can we navigate which companies to put our confidence in? Joining us now to discuss the biggest ESG winners and losers of 2023 is market analyst Bob Sellers. Bob, welcome on.
Hi, Christina. How are you? Yeah, you know, ESG, I'm going to give you the good and the bad of this because ESG in and of itself, it's become a little controversial. But let's start with this. If you were going to invest in ESG, you'd want to know what companies had good programs. Well, Investors Business Daily actually went in and assessed some of the most profitable companies that were involved with ESG, environmental, social, governmental governance, just to remind you what ESG is. And a lot of us think about it as sustainability as something healthy for the world, if you will, and hopefully healthy for the bottom line, especially for investors. So they went through and took a kind of the top 100, and let's look at the top 10. And some very familiar names you're going to see right here, including Microsoft, Applied Materials, which makes chips, computer chips, Woodward, which is an aerospace company, Verisk, MasterCard, we all know about them. Yeah, you think of ESG can apply to all of that because we're also talking about governance. Is there diversity at the top? That sort of thing is part of ESG as well. Caterpillar, which is, they make all the tractors and that sort of thing. Caterpillar typically is the kind of stock where you think the economy's good because they're digging holes. That's always a good sign. Marathon Petroleum, NVIDIA, again, another semiconductor chips company. Dova Motorola Solutions, again, making chips. So, Christina, these are some of the winners. Now, some of the losers have been Siemens Energy, Ørsted. I'm not going to give a whole long list of those. I think I need to point out, though, some of the things that are going on in ESG, and that is this. ESG was a real hot investment topic over the past couple years. ESG has reached the point, folks, where it was being used to put in the title of investment funds to attract money to it. And the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, is even looking into a lot of these funds to ask the question, are you just using this to get people to put money with you? So this year, toward the end of the year now, is what we're talking about, you actually see investment funds taking ESG out of their title for a couple of reasons. Number one, because they don't want to mislead people. And number two, there are a lot of investors that want you to focus on the bottom line and making money. They don't necessarily want you to worry about the environment and social policy and governance, those kinds of things. If you want to make that part of your plan going forward, they're fine with that, but make money.
Do you have any tips for our viewers on if they wanted to maybe break into investing or specifically ESG investing, how they could do so safely? I know you said that a lot of companies were just putting ESG in their title, but they might not actually be a full-fledged ESG company. How can viewers navigate that?
Well, I'm not a financial advisor anymore. Used to be, but I would look. Me personally,
yes.
I would say if you're looking for good, solid companies, I think you're going to find that they will incorporate ESG in some fashion. Now, if ESG is really important for you, you can find them. As I mentioned, Investors Business Daily is making a list, as we showed you the top 10. But I think more and more investors are looking at what kind of return am I going to get? You know, the hot topic right now is AI. For good or bad, artificial intelligence is driving a lot of investment. So if you're looking for something that just because it's attached to ESG, it's going to zoom, probably not going to happen. So I'd be very careful about that. And especially if this is retirement money, because that's what a lot of people are doing, investing broadly with retirement. If you're going to be very specific, you have to be careful because you can lose that money.
What are your projections for ESG in 2024?
I think it's going to become just a part and parcel of companies that want to be responsible but don't want to be defined just as ESG. It has to be part of a company that actually has a strong business, and if they incorporate that into their the way they do business, that's fine. But if you had to ask me about 2024, I would say find good, solid investments in ESG. Really, to be honest, would be down the list as far as what I would find important.
Interesting. All right. Bob Sellers, thank you so much for coming on.
You bet.
Coming up, the holiday season is upon us, and a Christmas tree farm in Scotland is getting some serious attention over its efforts to protect the environment. Stay tuned. That story is just ahead. A family-run Christmas tree farm in Scotland has some eco-friendly practices that aim to increase biodiversity and promote sustainability. And their efforts might even settle the debate over whether you should get a fake tree or a real one this Christmas, and which one is better for the environment. Alex Salvi has more.
It's starting to look a lot like Christmas, with trees going up in cities across the world. London, Madrid, the Vatican, and Washington, D.C. Christmas trees travel far distances to get to their final destinations, with the White House's Fraser fir, standing just over 18 feet tall, being grown in North Carolina and transported via flatbed truck to the nation's capital. The white spruce at the Vatican, towering 82 feet tall over St. Peter's Square, arrived from a forest in the Piedmont region near France, installed with the help of 2 cranes. The 40-foot Sitka spruce in front of London's Houses of Parliament was once selected from among 150 million trees and traveled around 350 miles to take pride of place in front of the iconic Big Ben for the festive period. But no matter where they come from or how big they may be, every tree has a beginning, each one from national capitals to family living rooms, equally important to those who buy them. The average 6-foot tree takes between 6 and 10 years to grow. The process of getting started is a complex one, with many businesses first getting their trees from a reputable nursery, then pruning them to increase their density and shape, then, of course, coming the harvest. Many growers plant more trees than they cut each year to practice sustainability, which also helps with sales down the line. a process that usually takes input from the environmental community into account. That's the process for the family-run Solach business in Scotland, which is preparing 20,000 trees for the seasonal festivities. They sell everything from young saplings planted this year to 18-foot giants planted back in the 1990s, all prepared for this year's rush. Sometimes getting into the Christmas season is easier said than done, as is often the case in Los Angeles, voted the second grinchiest city in the United States after New York, according to money website Finance Buzz. But still, for those looking to celebrate, they certainly do what they can to make it feel like Christmas, with the renowned retail district, The Grove, showcasing its 22nd annual festival. The area is temporarily turned into a winter wonderland, with a visit from Santa, live music, and fake snow falling through the air. But the 100-foot white fir is very much so real, proving no matter where you are in the world, the Christmas tree is an irreplaceable staple of the season. For EarthX, I'm Alex Salvi.
Alex Salvi, thank you. And before we leave you, ecologists are taking steps to help an endangered species thrive in Australia. Staffers at the Australian Wildlife Conservancy released nearly a dozen quolls into the wild at the Mount Gibson Wildlife Sanctuary earlier this month. The latest group to be released joined 30 other western quolls that were already returned to the wild at the refuge in April and June. Officials at the AWC say since their reintroduction earlier this year, the possum-like animals have adapted to the environment and even started breeding. The marsupials grow to be about the size of a domestic cat. Conservation officials say the fuzzy animals are critical native predators as they play a key role in controlling populations of small invertebrates, including certain reptiles and birds. That's it for this edition of EarthX News. Please join us again next week. I'm Christina Thompson.